Hi, everyone. I'm Eva Yazhari. I am the managing partner of Beyond Capital Ventures. We are an emerging markets venture capital fund. And today I am interviewing two of the co-founders of the company Cinch. Cinch is unlocking value in smallholder assets in Kenya. And we will hear from Alex Fankuchen and Richard Gadbois about what the company does and how it does it and what their vision is for the future. We invested not long ago in the end of 2023, and this is our opportunity to really hear from the founders. So I'm going to start off by welcoming both of you, Alex and Richard. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation.
Thanks for having us, Ava.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, let's dive in. What motivated you to start Cinch?
So, in terms of all of the groundwork that we laid in starting this business, we looked around at the ecosystem of companies and organizations trying to help smallholders. And we really thought that there was a unique entry point to treat smallholders as equal partners and actually challenge some of the basic assumptions in this space. One of them being that people choose to be smallholder farmers. And what we found in a lot of our research is that a lot of smallholders that you interact with here in Kenya and beyond pursue farming because they don't have many other choices. They're born into a situation where land is their only asset, and they're not really getting value out of that asset because as land gets more fragmented over generations and farms get smaller, the ability to generate a reliable return on that investment actually diminishes very quickly. So we kind of took this starting point of finding land that's fragmented, that people are not getting value out of, and really turned the problem on its head and thought about how we could take economies of scale and bring them into that context in a way that's inclusive and benefits all the landowners.
Incredible. Richard, anything you want to add on to that?
No, I think you did it pretty well. I mean, when you look at the sort of 3 billion of the poorest people on the planet, they typically have one thing in common, which is that their only asset is a small, unproductive piece of land. So we looked at that very, very, very large problem and tried to find a solution that was one that could help unlock the value in that asset and have been a driving force in our business since then. So
I really appreciate that you're bringing this point to light. I think it helps our investors understand the problem statement, which is there is actually unproductive land, and your goal is to make it more productive. Even though it is an asset of a smallholder farmer, you have a unique way of doing that. And so I think that naturally, kind of you were mentioning helping smallholders make their land more productive. Does that have impact? And if so, which, as everybody who's watching knows that we have an impact focus in our fund, so inherently it would, what is the impact? Help unpack that for us.
Sure. I think our business model. Sorry. Do you want to?
No, I was just going to say, so from an impact perspective, you have, basically the landowners, and then you have the ecosystem around them. So, obviously our full-time staff, casual workers, et cetera. From a landowner perspective, we typically increase the income on a per acre basis of around 5 to 7 times what they were making before on that singular asset. And then obviously within the communities in which we operate, we are usually the largest employer, and we create a lot of economic activity around our farms. So when we go to these areas, typically these are desertified areas. A lot of the land is fallow. There's not a lot of opportunity to even use the land. So there's a huge impact from on a dollar basis, but also from having guaranteed monthly income, and then obviously from an economic perspective, the amount of jobs and the amount of the knock-on effects of those are actually pretty significant. So if you consider, in the communities we've been in, we've seen crime rates have dropped, school attendance has increased. In one of the areas that we've actually piloted in Naramoro, the area was on government support for the 5 years before we were there. So that means providing them with food and things like that. Within 12 months of us being there, they were taken off that program. And the way that they measure that is through economic opportunity, income improvement, all of those different types of things. So I think from our perspective, we come in and obviously people work directly with us, but the overall community, sees a huge lift in the prospects of kind of being there. And also, you have now careers that are available in those locations where they typically weren't. And so you had a lot of people moving into the cities in order to get work, and now they are able to stay where they lived and with their families and things like that. So on a kind of standalone basis, we increase spending power and we increase purchasing power by increasing their incomes, but then also doing a lot of other things on our platform where we sell our crops at below market prices to the community, and we have our lending and financial products that we provide to these communities that typically have not had them before. So there's many different ways, but it's pretty interesting to see the economic activity and boom that comes along with a Cinch farm operating in their area.
And this is all in Kenya, just to clarify for our listeners.
Yeah, so far all in Kenya, soon to be elsewhere, hopefully.
Well, that's a natural segue into the next question, which is, what is your long-term vision for this business? How do you intend to grow? And if you could also weave in, what crops you are typically growing, I think that would be particularly interesting.
Of course, yeah. And when we talk about our vision for the company, we actually look at it through the lens of land management and how to unlock productivity in land. And our simplest metric for productivity is the dollars of revenue that an acre generates in a year. And when you position it that way, it's actually very easy to think beyond agriculture very, very quickly. So we'll get into that in a minute. But within agriculture, we've broadly kind of expanded our vision, where we started with high value, fast growing crops. So think horticulture, things like potatoes, onions, garlic, French beans, and broccoli. And we've been doing that since day one in Kenya for the last 4 years. Some of those crops are sold domestically in Kenya and really contribute to local food security. Others are sent for export to Europe and the Middle East and really help with the foreign exchange in Kenya at a time when that's greatly needed. And from that base of horticulture, we've expanded outward to do high value perennial crops. So things like pyrethrum flowers that we do with one of our partners here in Kenya, and increasingly tree-based crops and other really interesting use cases of this agriculture kind of approach. Including some that are going to go directly to help strengthen Kenya's domestic food security. We could talk a little bit more about that later this year, but we're running some large-scale trials that are quite exciting. Beyond agriculture, when we look at this idea of land aggregation to unlock value, there's lots of things that we want to apply that to, lots of problems and opportunities that we feel like we could open up with that idea over time. So it could be things in the conservation space and helping to set up new land conservancies. It could be broad, large-scale carbon sequestration opportunities where we're doing regenerative agriculture or reforestation to sequester more carbon in the soil. And even thinking beyond that, there's lots of opportunities to generate clean, renewable energy that require a lot of land. So those are things that we're thinking about in the long term for our vision.
Thank you. That's fascinating. I mean, to think about going from effectively agriculture, but then thinking about agriculture as a land asset is something that we really found attractive about the business long term. So we invested in your seed round, and I would love for you to just touch on how our investment and the investment that surrounds our investment, because there's more capital that recently came in, how that will be utilized. What is the use of funds? How it will help you grow more immediately?
Yeah, so this round was, well, first off, it's going to be pretty catalytic. So thank you for being involved.
Thank you so much.
We spent the first, we spent the first 3 years of our business when we came here, trying to prove the model of non-contiguous commercial farming. And I think a lot of people thought we were crazy when we first came here. We've made a lot of mistakes with our initial kind of, seed capital, as you're supposed to, or, I guess the angel capital, whatever you want to call it. But over the last couple of years, we've started to be able to, on a farm basis, make it a profitable venture for each one of those different verticals. So as a part of sort of the next step that we're trying to get to, which is roughly like 10 million in revenue on a run rate basis before the A at least, this money is going to be used basically to grow our existing footprint and also grow and invest in our team. So we recently hired a very senior person named Yoed Lando from VegPro. He ran the largest farm in East Africa for the largest company, I think definitely in East Africa, but definitely one of the largest on the continent as far as agriculture is concerned at VegPro. And then obviously all the supporting cast that has come in to basically prime the pumps for us to grow over the next couple of years in preparation for our A. Obviously, our business, since we do everything in-house and we do commercial irrigated farming, we are a capital-intensive business. So part of this seed capital and part of the round is going towards actually unlocking more debt capital to kind of fund that growth. For the time being, we're focusing on things that we know work that we've done in the past. So we've, had that kind of that track record where we can put debt capital and obviously our own equity into growing it. But we're really using this to secure the team, make sure that we have this same team here that could do 100,000 acres. And those, they're obviously, expensive, but we think it's the right investment now because, you basically, running a farm at 100 acres and running a farm at 1,000 acres is incredibly different. Running a farm at 10,000 acres, you have problems that some people, if they've not been in that situation, wouldn't even have come across because they don't even happen, in the different stages. So we feel like we've, made the investments now to take us, as I mentioned, to that 10 million run rate, annual revenue number. And at that point, we're going to do our A. We're hoping to raise a pretty substantial A round. And I think at that point, we'll then look at using the money for other R&D projects, other countries, investing in different verticals, as Alex mentioned, like not just agriculture, we can go and do other things, looking at our platform. And we have a very interesting or unique view into the wallet of our consumer in that we are typically the only income stream that they have. So finding really innovative ways to add value there and other things. So it's very catalytic. This is sort of all a year's work of preparation and kind of priming the pumps for what is supposed to be a pretty exciting 2024 and 2025.
I can't wait. With that, I want to wrap up this interview by asking you a more personal question. What book is on your nightstand right now? Alex, do you want to go first?
Sure. I like to alternate fiction and nonfiction. So I kind of either read a fiction book and a nonfiction book simultaneously, or I use one as a palate cleanser for the other. What I'm reading right now is A History of Burning. It's a multi-generational family epic about a family that emigrates from first India to Kenya and then Uganda, and then are expelled during Idi Amin's rise in Uganda and then travel to Canada. And it's really interesting to see the lens of the second half of the 20th century, or the story of the 20th century as viewed through the lens of this Indian, Kenyan, Ugandan, Canadian family.
What an incredible recommendation.
Yeah,
Richard.
it's great.
Yeah. Richard, what is on your nightstand?
So Alex is aware that I like historical nonfiction books typically. And given that I lived in Hong Kong and Asia for about a decade, he just gave me this book actually, 2 days ago, since I just finished the one. I just finished Dead 8 actually, but it's called Red Roulette, and it's by Desmond Shum, an insider's story of wealth, power, and corruption and vengeance in today's China. So very interesting book, hopefully.
Two great picks. I happen to be reading a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X, which I highly recommend. So it might be worth picking up since we're all in growth mode. But it's been incredible to spend time with you, Alex and Richard. Thank you for building a business that is innovative, forward-thinking, potentially future-proofed. There's a lot in what you're creating at Cinch, and we really have appreciated the partnership at Beyond Capital Ventures. Thanks for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for speaking with us, Eva, and for being on this journey with us as BCV.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Cheers.